Well, my interview today is with a founding father of To the Top Talk podcast. He's had a great stand-up comedy run, and a lot of you know him as a great Seymour run that he had for 3 years back in the day. And with all that said, my interview today is with my great friend, Jamie Arrington. Jamie, how you doing, man?
And it's always a great day to be a Golden Eagle. Good to be here on Anyone, Anywhere, Anytime, which I believe, wasn't that your dating motto in college? Or
Anyone, anywhere, anytime at the Senior Frog Ropers. I mean, if you knew me back in the 90s, it was football and dating. Yeah, you got me, Jamie. You got me.
Dude, what a classic name for a podcast. I mean, that is a motto that, back in the day it was trademarked. It was something that we live by. So it's cool to see you bring this back.
Yeah, man, I got the blessing from Southern Miss to do it. It was a no-brainer when they gave me the blessing, man, because I lived through that. I played through that. You see more through that, man. You know what's up. But Jamie, I got to ask you real quick, man. How'd you become Seymour? What was the calling to be Seymour?
I'll make this brief, but I was a third generation Golden Eagle. I mean, my grandfather was a huge Southern Miss fan. My family attended Southern Miss. So I just grew up like one of the first gifts my grandfather got me was a stuffed eagle. Like back then it wasn't called Seymour. It was, sometimes you may refer to it as Nugget, and it terrified me. Like I literally started bawling when he gave me that. But as I went on, when I got to high school, I went to Oak Grove High School. One of my friends was a mascot there, and he was like, you should try out and do this. It was my senior year. I kind of was like, but it always stuck in the back of my mind. So I went to Jones Junior College, and first year I wasn't mascot. The second year I was like, you know what, I think I could do this. So I tried out and I got it. I had some friends that were cheerleaders and made it. And it was such a fun year. We had Javon Walker and Deion Branch were our wide receivers. Anthony Maddox, the milkman on the defensive line, all guys that went on to play in the NFL. So we went undefeated and just ran through everybody. So it got to the end of that year, and there was really only one choice. I did have some discussions with other places, but Southern Miss is where I wanted to go. I came here and tried out and made it. And the listeners may not realize this, but there are multiple Seymours in a given season that rotate in and out of the costume. So one of the first guys I was on the squad with was Clint, my friend from high school, who tried to get me to be a mascot in high school. So we ended up being on the squad at Southern Miss together a few years after that conversation.
Man, that's absolutely awesome. But real quick, Jamie, you hit on a topic right there. Kind of that 1970s Seymour. They're supposed to be fun and silly and bring joy. Man, if you look at the mascot from back in the day, dude, that thing scares the hell out of me, man. Was it that looking Seymour that you had as a kid?
It was the doll was kind of like that, but the actual mascot when I was a kid was, I don't know if they called him Nugget or just Eagle or what. The Seymour name didn't come around until like 1990. So mid 80s, there was a string of good mascots. I could name off a few, but the one that really stood out was Jeff Davis. And he was a guy who, he has famous antics of like, sitting on the goalpost, standing up next to the goalpost, holding it, beating up a bear or something around Bear Bryant. He had all these shenanigans. He was the mascot for the 84 World's Fair in New Orleans. So he was Seymour to Fair. So when he came back, Seymour, that's how the name Seymour to Campus came about, from the mascot that he was in New Orleans. But he was a guy who blazed a lot of trails, really involved in UCA. And they didn't have some of the things that it's evolved into at that time, but he was widely regarded as one of the best in college.
Jamie, you say he was one of the best. Man, you were one of the best. You were on the inaugural Capital One All-American mascot team, man. You became a big deal with Seymour. I saw you on commercials and stuff. But man, it started a little rough for you though there, man. Your first away game, we're at Nebraska, you get ejected. What the hell happened?
So
talk about the ejection, man.
I think we've passed the statute of limitations on this particular story, so I will move forward with this one. But I loved wrestling growing up, and I loved being the bad guy. So we're playing Nebraska, and this is 1999. One of the baddest defenses. You were on the field with a lot of these guys too. The 97's right there, with them. But one of the baddest defenses that we've had at Southern Miss. So we had a lot of bad dudes. We were taking on Nebraska, and this was a time when Nebraska was Nebraska. So we go into Nebraska, and I'm we had an event the night before I forgot, some restaurant, and I'm walking out, and one of the Nebraska fans is like, "Hey, you know, you guys are 17.5 point dogs. Should we take the points?" And I was like cocky. I was like, "Go do what you want to do." I was like, "But I guarantee you we'll cover that spread tomorrow. You know, if not win the game, we're coming to play." And we did just that. I think we had a fumble there towards the end that kind of put them in position to take a 6 point victory. But during the game, I love being the bad guy. So I was taunting fans. I know that it's frowned upon now, but I was throat slashing everybody. I was pointing at everybody. I was taunting everybody. That's how I enjoyed myself. And there was this one ball boy who kept giving me trouble the whole game. Like, he just was being he was being a problem. So I went up behind him again. This is 1999. This is not 2023. I went up behind him. I grabbed his athletic shorts and just yanked him down real quick. And then I ran off. I actually ran over by where TJ Slaughter was. I felt like that was a good place to be at that moment. And I turned him around.
Good to be with TJ always.
Good to be around TJ, yeah. Although TJ was in TJ form, so I didn't touch him. I was just kind of in that area. But I see him talking to this campus police officer. He's, just in shorts. And
wait, Jamie, he wasn't free balling, was he? I mean, did
he had on whitey tighties, and it was right in front of our crowd. So, the crowd that saw it was like, "Oh my God," But it was one of those things where what also added to that is we were beating Nebraska in the third quarter. So the tension, you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, it was like crickets in there. And so the campus police officer, her name was Barb McGill. She had me ejected from the stadium. And when I was leaving, I was kind of doing the whole shtick where I had my arms behind my back like I was getting arrested. And they took me off, and I have a file with Nebraska campus police. And at the end of the game, one of the cheer coach came by and said, "You need to get out of here." So I went and got on the bus. And, I haven't been back in Nebraska Stadium since then. But funny story, I get on the bus, then I go get on the plane to fly back. And I'm sitting the whole time like, "Oh, man, it's all over now. I just wasted it all." I get on the plane, and Horace Fleming, who was the president at the time, sees me. And he says, "Hey, Jamie, come here." I'm like, "All right." He says, "I saw you getting taken off the field. What happened?" So I told him the story, and he goes, "Well, if you don't get in trouble, sometimes you really aren't trying." And then that was it. No repercussions, nothing. I learned my lesson, to all the young folks ready to get up in the fur, don't do that. But
that's awesome. But Jamie, did you learn your lesson? You were still up to shenanigans after that with Seymour. And I got to bring this up, man. 2002, the greatest mascot fight of all time at Alabama, man. Walk me through that. Hundreds of dollars of damage. Walk me through it, man.
Well, you talk about the Capital One All-American team, and all of us on the squad, me, John Mills, who was my partner in crime during this time. If it wasn't for like me and John, the partnership there, I don't know that we would have been able to do what we were able to do. Amon Younger was another guy on the squad that can, helped out as well. But so we're on this Capital One All-American team. Now you rewind a little bit before that. Seymour made the UCA College Mascot National Championship for the first time back in 2001. We ended up placing 10th. 2002, we qualified. I had torn my meniscus leading up to it. Had a decent performance at nationals, but ended up finishing 7th in the country at both those nationals. So it was cool to kind of put Seymour on the map in that regard, competing for a national championship. That's really the most prestigious championship you can have. So then later in 2002, you have the Capital One All-American team. Now there were 3 schools who competed in nationals at both of those, and who were on the Capital One All-American team. It was Southern Miss, Tennessee, and Alabama. We called ourselves the MWO. We taught camps together. We worked together. So during that summer of 2002, the mascot at Alabama, who would be, one of the mascots on the squad, was my roommate. We were teaching camps. So we'd be up late one night. We need to do this year. We need to go all out. We need to put on a show, So we kind of had this plan concocted for months before we went to the game. So we meet at Bryant Denny Stadium, probably about 4 hours for the game, and we block out what we're going to do. We're like, okay, we just kind of walked through it before anybody was really in there. Like, all right, I'll toss you to this kicker's net. Okay, what if I grab your trunk, throw you in the fence? It's like, okay, what if I get you in front of our student section? I hit you with the rock bottom and then jump off the top. Yeah, that'll sell it. Let's do it. We were really good friends. We didn't want to one up each other, so we wanted the fight to end in a draw. So you get to the game, Southern Miss Alabama. It was either on ESPN or ESPN2. I can't remember. There were only two at the time, and we start duking it out during the game. And I toss him through the kicker's net. He hits me over the head with a trash can, so forth and so on. I grabbed one of the cheerleaders' megaphones from Alabama, hit him over the head with it. It breaks. And in the end, we made it look like it was a draw. So it was about a 5-minute fight. You can find it on YouTube. It is the highest engaged YouTube video that I have. So clinging to those glory days 20 years later. But he got in a lot of trouble after that. So the Southeastern Conference issued a mandate after that fight that mascots were not allowed to interact during games, and that is still in effect today. We did several $100s worth of damage. So we broke the Alabama kicker's net for the game. They tried to rig it up, I think. So we broke their kicker's net. We smashed the cheerleader megaphone. He had to go apologize to Coach Franchione. I don't even think anybody knew what I had done. Like, I got in absolutely no trouble. Like, I think it was just like, all right, whatever. Like, we got off scot-free. He got in, like, I think that changed his life. It was so much that came down on him. Alabama fans were writing in like mail, like, I can't believe Big Al would fight in front of the children or whatever. Like, I was like, you obviously haven't seen Big Al. Like, that's his shtick. He has so many, stories like that. So yeah, it's a legendary story that lives on through the magic of YouTube now.
Man, I've watched it at least 20 times. Anybody watching this, please go to YouTube and check it out. You'll laugh. I mean, if you want to see two mascots go at it. But hey, man, there were more shenanigans while you at Southern Miss, man. The coach was Jeff Bauer, the legendary head coach, my coach. And every now and then I got on Coach Bauer's bad side, and you didn't want to be on his bad side. But Jamie, I heard you got on his bad side one time, man, with a mascot video that came out from the NCAA. Tell me about it, man.
So this is heading into the 2001 season. The year before, we played TCU with LaDainian Tomlinson in what was then the Mobile, Alabama Bowl. And one of the things that we tried to do was we tried to get on camera. And what's the best way to get on camera? Whenever there's a touchdown, you jump in the end zone. So that was if you go watch games from 2000, you'll see it in just about every game where if there's a touchdown, Seymour's trying to get in the end zone and celebrate. That was just what we did. So we get this tape, and Paul Batchelder was the head of marketing at the time, and he called us to his office. He said, "Hey, Coach Bauer sent this tape over. He wants you to watch it." And it was the updated NCAA rules video, and they were like, "Rule, 172B: mascots are no longer allowed on the field of play," and it shows footage of Seymour in slow motion running into the end zone at the Mobile, Alabama Bowl. It was priceless.
You got on Coach Bauer's bad side a little bit there for a minute, but Seymour led the way with mascot trouble always, it seemed like back then. Hey man, I want to ask you a question too, man. Being Seymour, you got this big head, this big costume on. You got to navigate through crowds. I mean, somebody might be holding a baby, it might be a drunk fan over here, man. Give me some stories trying to navigate through crowds, man.
You had to keep an eye on your midsection, because there was always going to be a little kid who would try to come up between your legs and just like ding, hit you with a reverse, Macho Man Randy Savage elbow there. And, they got us sometimes, but you'd have to really kind of keep your head on a swivel. But I'll tell you a story about one time. This is not me. This is John Mills. This is John Mills doing. He deserves full credit for this, but it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. So we were in Jackson. We were at the kickoff party, which they would have at the Trade Mart in Jackson every year. And there was this one kid who just would not let up, kept trying to come, ding us, kept trying to hit us and stuff. So John reaches in the trash can and he grabs just a plate out of the trash can. It was just covered with barbecue. And he just turns around, rears back, and just wham, hits that kid across his face. And you see like the sauce and all, like run out. He's just like boo-hooing. And his parents were like laughing, like, "See, we told you if you didn't act right, this was gonna happen." And I was dying. John is just a legend for that, and I'm sure that kid's probably like in his mid-20s to 30s now.
That's awesome. I'm picturing Seymour the play barbecue sauce in the kid's
Just
face.
laughing
He
his
did,
head off
there's
his
only
face.
so much Seymour can take. I know he's a big lovable
Yeah.
creature, but Jamie, I want to ask you too, and I'm fascinated by this, man. When we're at hot games in South Mississippi, and you got this big ass costume on, man, how in the hell did you stay cool in 100-degree Mississippi weather?
Man, so there were ice packs, but after 20 minutes, you're pretty much just carrying dead water weight. I mean, because they would melt. I mean, the field temperature in that 96-99 game against Tulane, I think the field temperature was like 130. I mean, it was just boiling. So you just had to build up an endurance. And thankfully, I was young, and I don't think I could do it today, but back then I was able to endure it. And really another way you have to endure it was Febreze. You had to keep Febreze just
Febreze.
that was like, if I had to sum up my college career in one word, it would be Febreze, because I'm sure that is what I smelled like most of the time.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Man, any more Seymour stories you want to share? One that's really sticking out that maybe we didn't hit on.
Oh, I liked yeah, I'll tell you a good one. I'll tell you a good one. I like to fight. I mean, it's frowned upon. I was a little dude, I was probably, a $145 soaking wet. But that's a way to entertain. But if you had buddies, if you had people that were mascots that were cool, you could stage things, or you didn't even have to fight. You could just interact if you knew each other. The mascot at Cincinnati was awesome. I think me and him, we jumped the Subway mascot in our game, and he had this pump in his mouth where the hand would just go like his mouth was eating. It was hilarious. But so this was the last time. I filled in a couple of times after I left Southern Miss, but this is the last time I suited up while I was in school. So it was the Conference USA Women's Basketball Tournament. It was in Chicago, Illinois. It was at DePaul, and we were taking on the Louisville Cardinals, and I just kind of came into that thing like I just did not care. Like I was just going to show out. It wasn't a huge crowd there. Our band was there. Our cheerleaders were there. So I was going in with my Walkman on. I was listening to Lil Jon. I was like, oh, this is about to be on. This is Louisville. And one of the old ladies who was working for the tournament, she came up to me like several times and was like, hey, no fighting during the game. No fight. And I was like, okay, I'm cool. Whatever. So this punk ass Cardinal,
punk ass Cardinal. I wasn't a fan of Louisville either. Go ahead.
He came out on the court and he was starting to bow up. Like he wanted to do first we're going to do a dance contest. And then he just kind of started. So I was out there dancing. So our girls came and danced with me, and he came over, and his girls danced with him. And I had on like a chain, and I had some play money. I tried to give him play money. He didn't like that. So he grabbed me by my chain, and I was like, oh, well, this is on. This is like halftime. So we locked up. He was a few inches taller than me. And so we're locking up, and I was like, all right, I couldn't push this guy over. So I kind of leaned back a little bit, and I kind of yanked him off to the side, and I rolled over on top of him, and I just started just wailing. I just started just throwing, and we were cussing at each other, and we were just
and you're in big Seymour costume.
See, in the Seymour costume, I was just pummeling him. And then I didn't want him to get back at me, so I got up. I ran over to where our band was. I had a WWE style belt, and I held it up like I stood on the rail, and I held it up like The Rock does. Then I went behind the bleachers, took off my costume, and I was done. I was like, if I'm going to go out, that's how I want to go out. So, yeah.
Man, what a way to go out right there, Jamie. I wanted to get some Seymour stories, some history there, because if you ask me what I've seen, maybe the best Seymour in history right here, Jamie Arrington. Great stories. And one thing, man, I find fascinating, college football players, college players go on to play pro ball, some of them. Yeah. Man, you took the mascot amateurism, went on and took it to be a pro mascot with the Chicago Bears, have become their first mascot, Staley, man. And tell me about that, man, being a pro mascot. Is there a difference? Is there skill levels? I mean, what's up?
Yeah, it was a big culture shock going from Hattiesburg to Chicago, Illinois. But it was a great time. It was a great experience. Something you I really didn't think it was possible until maybe my junior year when we started going to nationals. I was like, okay, maybe I didn't know what I wanted to do after college. I was like, well, maybe this is something I can do.
Yeah.
So I went up and they had a tryout in Chicago. It was me, and it was 4 other guys who were actually with other teams at the time. So I really didn't know if I had a shot, but I came prepared. You know, I had a really strong skit. I had the Super Bowl shuffle in my skit. I came first, so I ended up getting the job. And it was interesting because the Bears are a team that has probably as much, if not more, tradition than just about any other team in sports when you really look at it, look at the longevity of things. So the fans were not particularly excited about a mascot. And, you know, I didn't get to do the debut that I wanted to do. It's just kind of like what it is. I kind of dealt with that. But I'll tell you 2 stories about the game itself. So my first game, we're playing on Monday Night Football. First game in the new Soldier Field, September 29th, 2003. Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears. Me on one side, Brett Favre on the other. It's the first time, you know, and the only time that ever really happened. And the Packers won the game. But pregame, I'm making my official debut, you know, so they get on the Jumbotron. All right, Staley the Bear comes out. I had this music playing. And the plan was my intern was going to dress up in Packer garb. He was going to come out. I was going to rough him up. I was going to rip his cheese head in half. I was going to throw it in the crowd, you know, this, that, and the other. Well, the mistake that we made, since this was our first game and I didn't really know anybody, is I forgot to tell security. So you see Staley running out on the field, and it's like, yeah. And then I turned around to kind of check and glance, and I see this swarm of security around my intern, like chasing him down. I see him get hit in the throat with like an elbow, catch him in the throat.
Oh, dude.
They drag him off the field. And so I'm like staying in character. I'm running behind him, like taunting him, like, yeah, get him, get him. We get back there.
He's really getting beat up by security.
Yeah. We get back there and I let him off the hook. So fast forward to the newspaper on Tuesday morning, on the front page of Chicago Sun-Times, first fan arrested at New Soldier Field.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. All you had to do was tell security, Jamie. Dang it.
All they do is tell security. And then you fast forward to the next week. So, you know, Chicago is this team with all this tradition. And a lot of the fans didn't really react to Staley. They're like, we don't need a mascot. We've got all this tradition. So I would get, and this was the early advent of email, so I would get hate mail. I'd get like, you know, you suck, whatever. So the next week we played the Oakland Raiders. Now the Oakland Raiders were coming off a AFC championship from the year before. They played Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl. So we had lost the first 3 games of the season. And this was a day game. It was on CBS. I've still got a photo of that game from when Bonnie Bernstein was sideline reporting, and I just went up beside her and I gave her a kiss on the cheek. I still got the photo.
Awesome.
It was a real fun game for me, and the Bears actually won that game. So during the game, when the momentum was changing, I was out there like trying to hype it up. I'll tell you something funny too about that. A little story within the story. This was when "Get Low" by Lil Jon came out.
Oh yeah, that was my jam. Get Low.
Nobody knew what it meant. So you see, like they would play the song. So you see me like in front of the crowd, like leading the crowd, like window to the walls, and like
where's this going?
Yeah, so it's like nobody. So, but it's in retrospect, it's hilarious, you know. But anyways, so I'm hyping the crowd up, and they win with a field.
Hold on, Jamie, because the rest of that song I got to get out my head. And I know a lot of people listen to this. That song. We regroup, Jamie, for a second. All right. Continue.
So the Bears win the game on a field goal, and I'm out there. You know, I always try to position myself near the referees when a field goals happen. So do the field goal signal. Bears win. Hate email went to fan email overnight, just off of that win.
Just you're a mascot getting hate email.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, gee. And real quick, I know there's a story about legendary linebacker for the Chicago Bears, Brian Urlacher, man. Tell me that one.
So at training camp that summer, the players went out they would go out during training camp. You've been to training camp. Yeah. So they would go out most every night, and the same bar every night, same VIP section every night. So you get in there, you start to meet, interact with the players. Now, I didn't really know Brian per se that well. You know, of course I met him, but didn't really know him. And one night he's like, I want to go somewhere else. Let's go to this other bar. So Brian, Olin Kreutz, who was a center, some of the interns, you know, a few other people went to this other bar down the road. And we get there, And it's almost like everybody knew we were coming. Like, so here Brian walks in, there were people with pictures of him, there were people with footballs. He signed every autograph, he took every single picture. He was just like as cool as he could be. And I was just like, man, this guy's really like, I mean, he's really comfortable in the spotlight. So we're sitting at this table, and it was like Brian, Olin Kreutz, me, and another intern named Mark. And Mark looks at me, he's like, hey man, that new Freddie and Jason movie's coming out. I was like, oh yeah. I was like, man, Freddie's gonna kick Jason's ass, man. This is gonna be, it's not even gonna be contest. And Brian hears this and he stands up and he like slams his fist on the table. He's like, Jason's way better than Freddie. You can't kill Jason. And he goes off on this tangent, and then he sits back down, has his beer, cool the rest of the night. But Freddie versus Jason set that man off.
Freddie versus Jason sent this tough linebacker off of it. Of all the things, that's awesome, man. Hey, dude. And so the NFL, you had a good little run there with the Chicago Bears and Staley, but it took you to more professional sports at the NHL with the Phoenix Coyotes, man. Now, I want to get into a couple stories right there. First up, you got entangled with the FBI somehow as a mascot with Phoenix. What the hell happened, man?
I was not involved in this.
Okay, you weren't involved, but I know there's an FBI story.
I was a witness. I have to clarify that. So yeah, one of the, and he actually has been the head coach of the Arizona Coyotes, Rick Tocchet, who played on Gretzky's team back in the day. Gretzky was our head coach when I was there. Rick Tocchet was an assistant coach. So walking through the hallway before one of the games, and I heard Tocchet tell somebody, yeah, take the Steelers big. And I was kind of like, I was pulling for the Seahawks because they had Ettrick Pruitt, the Southern Miss guy. And I was kind of like, come on, man, and I didn't think anything of it. So you fast forward like a week after the Super Bowl, and I'm sitting in the office, and Sports Center comes on, and there is a Operation Slapshot, they called it, an FBI investigation into sports gambling, with Rick Tocchet being one of the main ones. That they had Gretzky's wife, I think, was involved in some capacity. And really, ultimately, they were trying to go after the mob, but it was just kind of surreal just to like, hear that. And then a week later, like, oh, wait a minute. Did I hear what I thought I heard?
Jeez, Pete, and dude, the Coyotes took you from the FBI, a little story right there. Remember the Mike Tyson possible confrontation. Tell me the Tyson story.
So one of the things that I was doing around this time, like on the side, in between Chicago and Phoenix, even after I left Phoenix, I was involved in boxing. Really, if you want to have a term for it, I'd call it hanger on. One of my good friends was a boxing writer, so I wrote some articles. He would put me down as his photographer. So we'd go to HBO fights, and I remember one in Memphis. I think it was Glenn Johnson versus Antonio Tarver, light heavyweight title fight. And I get there and I can't find my spot on press row. So I asked the press lady, I was like, well, where do I go? And she said, oh, you're over here. And she takes me up to the ring. So if you watch that fight, you'll see me with a little like point and click camera, like doing all this. And then you see guys with the big, legitimate media cameras around. So I was kind of involved. I knew people. So Mike was coming to do an appearance for us. He lives in Arizona. And the guy that owns the website that we were affiliated with at the time, Boxing Talk, I shot him a message and I said, hey, Mike's coming to our thing today. You got anything you want to tell him? And Mike gave him the nickname, the Minister. And he said, tell him the Minister sends his regards. So I walk into the locker room, and it's about an hour before Mike's thing. And I just walk in, I say, hey, Mike, I'm Jamie with Coyotes. The Minister sends his regards. And Mike lights up. And he gets up, he gives me a hug. He's like, So we're talking, and we just shoot the bull for a good part of that hour, just talking boxing, just talking life and stuff. And Mike was just like as cool as he could be. So we get to the end, kind of where it's about that time. So his manager comes in. His manager's name's Nick. And Mike's like, oh, this is Jamie. He's my boy. He knows G Leon. And Nick goes, well, let's find out. Let's call him. So they call Greg. What does he do? He leaves me hanging. So he calls up, they call up, and Mike's like, Mike kind of, his tone changed. He's like, yeah, if G says he didn't know you, I'm gonna throw you in that bucket of ice water over there.
This is Mike Tyson.
This is Mike Tyson. So Greg just, totally leaves me hanging. And I'm like, come on, dude. And then finally he's like, all right, he's good. So Mike gave me a hug. We took a picture. He said, God bless you. And that was the last I saw of him.
Wow, man, I've been shaking, man, trembling. Even people think I'm a tough guy. I've been trembling. So good for you to get out of there with good vibes still. So, but
the crazy thing to me, we were the same height.
He's about 5'9", 5'10".
Yeah.
5'9". Yeah. So interesting, man, right there. But still, Mike Tyson, man, goodness gracious. Baddest man on the planet, baddest man. But hey man, great mascot run there in the pros and the college ranks. And you talk boxing for a little bit. Up in Jackson, you got to be a boxing judge in an event on a card with Butterbean and Tanya Harding. What a combination, man. Tell me about that night and judging with that card.
Yeah, it was a fight in Jackson. I got to be a boxing judge for one night. The state athletic commission passed me, and so I gave Butterbean the loss that night. It was a split decision. He lost to a guy named Kenny Craven from Laurel. I thought Kenny was landed more punches, was more was more aggressive. If you're counting punches, I thought Kenny clearly was the winner. So I gave Kenny the win. That's the first time he defeated Butterbean. I think he went on to defeat him another time after losing to him the first time they fought. But so Tanya was on the undercard. So after the fight, the promoter was like, "Hey, we've got a shuttle going to the after party if you guys want to go." I was like, "Yeah." So I just went and hung out in the lobby. So Tanya was in the hotel. She came and hung out in the lobby. So we just got to talking. And then the VIP for the event was Leon Spinks. And so it's the three of us, and the shuttle bus comes, and it's the three of us that get on. So I was like, this is like the surreal life type of thing. So we go to this after party, we have a good time. We come back to the hotel bar, and they're like, "Hey, let's have some drink shots, whatever." By this time, we're talking like it's going to be about 2 a.m. Leon is like drunk out of his mind, like he is just incoherent. So we went and tucked him into his bed, and Tanya's like, "Hey, I got a case of Bud. You want to have some more beers?" I was like, "Yeah, let's do this."
This is you, Tanya, tucking Leon Spinks in the bed.
Yeah. And I got a Leon follow up to this too. So we're sitting there. She has like a suite, so we're sitting there like in the chairs, just kind of shooting the bull, just talking. She was really as cool as she could be. I mean, I know people say what they will about her, but she was an absolute sweetheart, and she was really cool to everybody she met, really cordial. I really think that if she hadn't been asthmatic, she would have been a world champion, because she had an incredible punch for her size, but she asthmatic, couldn't make the rounds. So we're sitting there, and she goes, "I need a dip." And she reaches in her purse and she pulls out a can of like Copenhagen, starts tapping it, and then just puts it in her jaw. I was like, man, I couldn't write a script like this. So,
dude, that's a scene from a movie. It's like a hangover scene. It's a scene from that movie.
So you fast forward like 3 years after that, and I'm covering Jermaine Taylor, Corey Spinks fight in Memphis with my buddy Brad, and we see Corey Spinks' father, and we run into Leon, and Brad goes up and he's like, "Hey, you remember me?" And Leon, yeah. And then he goes, "You remember him?" And then Leon sees me, he's like, it was like he remembered what all we went through that night.
Man, like I said, it's a scene from the movie Hangover, dude, and that's awesome, man. Dude, you got so many colorful stories, man. Just the mascot run and everything you did, and one thing, Jamie, nobody's ever going to question your Southern Miss fandom, man. Top of the charts, and that took you to be the founding father of a famous podcast in the Southern Miss world, the To the Top Talk podcast, man. What led you to start that and get that thing running to where it is now, which is doing really well?
Yeah, so I was at the time I was working in outside sales. I spent a lot of time on the road, listening to a lot of podcasts, and there really weren't many. Like Laney Mixon had a Southern Miss radio show locally. He started putting it on podcast form, but he quit doing that after a while. There really wasn't much going on. So I had thought about doing it, and finally, like 2020 into 2015, I was like, I really want to do this. And I heard that Super Talk was wanting to do a podcast, and connected with the folks at Super Talk, ended up getting in the mix with Matt Wyatt. Matt Wyatt from Mississippi State Lore actually produced that first 6-month run of our podcast. Like, he edited it. He was my go-to guy every week to consult with him. So Matt Wyatt played a huge role in getting it off the ground. And it started off just being like where we would do interviews, and then it kind of evolved into, we left Super Talk and went to 98.1. We went to the Score here in Hattiesburg, started doing it on there, and then it just evolved to where Jason Bailey was my co-host. He's one of my best friends. It was just like, yeah. So once we started doing that, we finally decided to leave the station and just do it on our own. And then Shane Lott, who's been another buddy of mine for like 20 years, he just kind of like organically happened. We're like, "Hey, dude, you want to just stay on this all the time?" And we had a lot of fun. I got to interview. So your interview on there was one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, that was awesome, man.
Tremendous
Telling my story, I had a blast.
one thing I absolutely love, the one thing I miss about it, if it's like, what do you miss? I miss like right before and after the draft, I would always talk with the players going to the NFL and just hearing like their thoughts and then hearing their excitement once they get with their team. That was like the highlight to me, is just like playing not even play a role, but just being able to chronicle the experience of these young athletes, what they're going through, and the excitement ahead, and then watching them go on to do big things. It's just incredible.
Oh, very, very cool, man. But Jamie, you got a comedic time and comedic side to you that's second to none. And I used to listen to the Top Talk when you were on it a lot. For one thing in particular, no disrespect, Jay Hobson, Coach Jay Hobson. But one of my favorite things of all time is fake Jay Hobson. I mean, he does speak monotone. If you could give me some fake Jay Hop or just a story behind it, and
Yeah.
it just because it's funny to me.
Well, that first season, um, Jay on a lot of his, and I had known him from before when he was here before, and you know, great family. Went through the whole cancer thing while he was here before. But his first year here, all of his interviews, he just would use the word reality, like rapid fire. Yeah, reality is, that's the reality of it. And so just kind of like I saw fans like picking up on that, and I was like, I just started kind of just doing it. And when I first did it, it took it some while before it kind of got some legs. You kind of had to start like really expanding the character to where he has this relationship with John Cox, where he calls him Coxie, and Coxie washes his car and stuff like that. And then it really just, it got out of hand when we started rapping.
I used to be in tears, Jamie, like literally tears, listening to this.
I do not think he was a fan at all.
No, like, I know, I'm sure.
He never did the show. He never, I mean, it really was like from a place of exaggerated jest, almost like Dana Carvey-ish was kind of the way we went with it. I do regret, do you remember the song? There's a song really popular in Louisiana called Bunny Hop. Like,
yeah, the Bunny Hop, man. I'm a New Orleans guy. Of course I know the Bunny Hop.
I wanted to do it to the J Hop. I wanted to have J Hop sing it and like, come on. Oh gosh, I had words picked out and everything, but I never did it. And then when things didn't happen, I was like, oh, I can't do it now. But that's the one I wanted to do, but never recorded. But we did a song called "Coachin'" to the tune of "Stroking" by Clarence Carter. We did the Independence Bowl to a Bone Thugs and Harmony song. We did a
dude. I used to be crying laughing, Jamie, at this stuff, man, and a lot of people did. And everybody, Coach Hop, just in case somebody watches, no disrespect. It was comedy. It was funny. It made me laugh.
I love Coach Hop. And but a lot of people didn't realize that it was me too, because I would edit it. So I would talk, and then I would edit it so that it sounded, sometimes it sounded like we were talking over each other. I would edit it so that it sounded like you ask a question. Hey, Coach, what you got? What's the game plan? Well, the bottom line is, we got to go there and put our pants on one leg at a time, just like they do. And, we had to. So I edited it in a way so that it didn't sound like me changing voices. I would take a minute, kind of, and then I would do the line, and then I would come back and do it myself and cut it so that it sounded like it was a conversation.
Man, it was funny. Like I said, you got timing. You just have everything about you with everything you was doing on To the Top Talk right there. And that was definitely funny to me. But man, speaking of comedy, you've had a pretty successful stand-up comic career. You run shows, you've done a lot of stuff. Man, what's the latest in stand-up comedy for you in that world?
I haven't done as much with the pandemic, but getting back doing a few shows. When this airs, my next show is going to be July 28th, the Sanger Theater. It's the Last for Life. This is a big charity show we do every year. We've raised over $1 million for cancer charities and research before we even get to this year. So the end of last year, we'd already topped $1 million. Made some strides with the Children's Cancer Center in Jackson. We built a wing there where children can play. International Myeloma Foundation. It's been a real treat. So I'm opening up, emceeing the event this year, July 28th. It is sold out, but maybe you can find tickets. John Christ is the headliner from social media and YouTube lore. So it's going to be a fun show. Sold out show at the Sanger, always a great time. So that's the next show for the horizon for me.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's turned into a big deal. I mean, if you want some laughs for an incredible cause, man, Jamie's doing a great thing right there within the community. So good work always right there. Hey, Jamie, man. Let's talk a little football. I enjoyed listening to you on the recent To the Top Talk podcast where you were talking a little football, what's going to happen, recapping the year. Man, real quick, twofold question. What are your thoughts on the 2023 football season coming up? And maybe after that, some advice for this year's Seymour, maybe, you know?
Ooh. As far as the 2023 season, there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, you've got a lot back. You've got some core pieces. You've got a lot of core pieces on the defense. You got, Frank Gore Jr. You've got a little more stability on the offensive line than what we may have had in the past. So everything is setting up to have a successful season, but you don't have an answer at quarterback right now. We don't know who the starting quarterback's going to be. We do have more quarterback depth, which hopefully it doesn't come in handy this year, but we've got more quarterback depth. But we've got a gauntlet run for the last part of that schedule that, if it's going to be tough. So, I mean, if I had to make a prediction, I'd say we'll have another winning season. There is an elevated ceiling this year if everything can click. But I feel like last year there were a lot of those games that we either won or lost by one score. And, that wasn't the case the year before. Last year, a lot of one-score games. Next year, hopefully we can kind of break through that a little bit more with some of the games we play. But it's going to be a tough schedule there for the last half of that. Advice for Seymour, so many things have changed since I was there. I mean, so it progressively gets to where you get away with less and less. So the mascots of the 80s could have got away with a lot. You see the infamous photo of, the Golden Eagle mascot and the Bulldog mascot at the Mississippi State Southern Miss game in 1986, and Seymour sitting on a Coors Light cooler. You couldn't get away with that when I was there. You couldn't get away with that.
Times have changed.
Times are changed, but there are beer sponsors in the stadium now, so maybe they could. I would say the same thing that I would tell you the same thing that Dr. Horace Fleming told me: if you don't get in trouble, sometimes you really aren't trying.
What a great slogan, man. That's incredible, man. Coming from the president too, man. Hey, and real quick, give you a shot. Anything else you might want to promote, or just tell the fans what you're up to right now, man? I know you're doing some great things out there in the world.
Yeah, I'm working for a podcast company, having a great time with that. Get back into comedy. I've been, hopping on a few of these podcasts, enjoying myself, to slinging some jokes, ready to get back in the Rock. Hey, have you seen? I mean, I know this is probably coming out soon, but have you seen the new turf at the Rock?
Man, it's gorgeous to me. I mean, I love it. I absolutely love it. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm ready to get back out. Now that just made me be like, all right, I'm ready for September. I'm ready for Labor Day weekend. Let's get back out here. Let's take on the Braves. I'm stoked. Focused.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie, you and I have talked, man, been sitting with you for years, and man, there's just I know I'm a homer. I know I love Southern Miss, I bleed black and gold, but we've talked. There's nothing like walking into the Rock, man. When it's even a big game or something, man, it's just there's something about that place. I don't know. I can't put a finger on it.
When it's I wouldn't even say when it's jam-packed, but when it's packed, like I don't think people realize, unless you're down on the field or on the sidelines, how loud it truly gets down there. Like when it's rocking and rolling, I mean, I don't have a sound meter or anything, but like to me, it's comparable to anywhere I've ever been, if not better, even though it's a much smaller stadium than other places that we've played and other fans that we've heckled and taunted. It's still down there. Like that TCU game, man, that 90, even though it wasn't jam packed out, I just remember the energy in 1997 against Houston at the Rock.
I remember that.
Raining. I mean, it can be an incredible spot last year, Thursday Night Football against the Raging Cajuns. I mean,
that was so much fun. So much fun at that game. Wow, place was rocking. And Jamie, the reason is, I mean, if you ever get to field level as a fan, it's the way it's built. I mean, the Rock is almost straight up, those two sides. You look up, it's, I've heard Michigan Stadium seats 100,000. Sometimes it's not that loud because it's out. It's built like that. The Rock is up, man. It's straight on top of you. So when it's rocking, it's rocking. Great take on 2023 and some advice for Seymour right there, Jamie. So, but I had to get you on, man. Have a good time. Tell some great stories, some great, energy with, somebody with great comedic timing, obviously. So, but Jamie, honored to have you on, man. I'll see you at the Rock soon for sure. I think it'd be a great thing, though, to close this show with you and I giving everybody a good Southern Miss to the top.
To the top.
There you go, baby. All right, Jamie, I'll see you Next time, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Marchant.